think I know better than anyone that there's a whole bunch of candidates out there that are less than ideal for this year's local body election. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some great candidates running as well all over the motu. So I figured I'd sit down, have a chat to some of them, learn about what it is that they want to bring to the table, see who it is that's running with it this election. Hello there, kia ora, welcome to the show. We're going to be sitting down with some of the election candidates from all over the motu to learn a little bit about their vision for their communities, the kaupapa they want to lead with, and how they intend to achieve what it is that they've laid out. Joining me today from the second largest city in the country and the largest in Te Waipounamu is Cr Templeton, a local body politician who's worked her way up from community board to councillor and now aiming for the top job in October. Kia ora, Sarah, how are you doing?
Kia ora, Paul. I'm doing really well.
How would you sum up your vision for our second largest city?
Yeah, I'm standing for Mayor for Aotearoa, Christchurch and Banks Peninsula 15 years after we had our first earthquake. So that was just a 15-year anniversary on Thursday. And I'm standing because we really need to focus on the next 15 years and actually do that future thinking stuff to create that affordable, resilient, accessible and inclusive city that everyone really wanted after the earthquakes. So a city that is more in touch with nature. So more trees, more plants, looking after our waterways, making sure we've got great drinking water, making sure we're looking after our infrastructure so that we're not, constantly repairing all our pipes and our roads. Making sure we've got a transport system that is fit for the future as well. So in 15 years' time, we're due to be 40 to 45,000 people bigger. We've already got New Zealand's slowest commute, and so that could be 25,000 extra cars on our road during rush hour, and we will just grind to a halt. So making sure that we've got a transport system that's fit for purpose with great public transport, active transport, walking and cycling is going to be essential for our city.
How do you make that happen then? Because obviously, future planning, you know what the population growth is supposed to be. There's obviously some spanners that can be thrown in the works along the way. I mean, Christchurch is the perfect example of a place where a spanner can be thrown in the works and suddenly have to shift focus. How do you go about working out where you put those priorities for that future growth and those future plans?
We're well on the way. So we've really focused. So the plans that were drawn up after the earthquake, with City Council and actually the national government at the time, there's some missed opportunities, but for the most part, they were really future focused. There were some great things put in, the major cycleways network, some of the precinct stuff. The River Promenade has really been a game changer for the central city, and more density in and around the central city has been really good for us. Funding is one of the key things. So we need to make sure that we have the funding and the partnership with central government for our public transport system into the future. That's a city shaper, both the public transport, the bus network, our PT Futures plan, but as well as that, the mass rapid transit of some form, whether that's light rail or bus rapid transit. And so the plans are all there and we are gradually working our way through them, which is great.
Funding for transport from government is obviously a big one. There's lots of partnerships that come into play. You've got things like national roading from Waka Kotahi, for example, that sort of stuff, as well as localised stuff. It's a good idea to turn down $1 billion if the government offers it to you.
It's just not. We had on budget $26 million for walking and cycling for school safety, $78 million for bus infrastructure, so bus lanes and shelters, that kind of stuff, and $800 million for the first stage of our mass rapid transit. And it turns out that the mayor, after the last general election, rang the new transport minister and said, "Oh, actually, we don't kind of need that stuff." And the thing is, it's not the stuff that he's in favour of, right? And so, council decisions. $78 million was a decision that council made to ask for. The Labour government allocated it, and a single phone call from the mayor got rid of it without telling anyone, without a vote. And that's really not what we need as a city.
It does speak to these kind of old boy clubs that you hear about all over the place. I would love to be able to ring up a government minister and say, hey, $1 billion, put it in this place.
I know.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's used the excuse, which I think is really cynical, of Cyclone Gabrielle and all the damage in Hawke's Bay. That happened in February 23, and it was just devastating for the region.
Mm.
And he's saying that that's the reason he did it. But actually, Simeon Brown wasn't minister until November that year, and that's when he made a call. And that $78 million for public transport was still hanging around until December 2024. That's when it was reallocated. So it didn't go to Hawke's Bay. And I think it's really cynical to be using that disaster in a political way like this.
When you've been out and about meeting candidates, and I'm guessing you've done a million Meet
Yeah.
the Candidate events at the
Yeah.
moment, and you've caught up with a huge chunk of the population, what are they telling you are the issues that they see facing the city?
Yeah, it is. It's really interesting. So we've done maybe 12 debates now, but as well as that, I've had a really large number of visits to, retirement homes or the university, individual coffees with residents associations, those kind of things. And there's a range of issues. Speed bumps doesn't come up very often. Um, in fact, when it does, so I went to the Kevin Hickman Retirement Village last week.
Mhm.
Did a bit of a 10-minute spiel on me, and one of the first questions I got from the residents there was, "Can you give us a speed bump, please? We're sick of the boy racers planting foot outside on our street. It makes it really hard for us
Mhm.
to get out and about, and we'd like a speed bump." So that's the kind of context I hear. People really care about the environment. Uh, and they care about climate change and they care about the future of our city. I think partly because we lost so much that they really, really care about us looking after what we've got now and into the future.
I was going to say, being someone who is not a fan of earthquakes, and you being in a place where an earthquake has done quite a bit to the city itself, how does that kind of event shape what voters want or what voters need from their council?
I, it's interesting. It's shaped it in a few ways. It means that, for example, the council's finances are quite different. We didn't have much debt
Mhm.
prior to the earthquakes, and now we've got a lot. But that debt has done things like help build a beautiful new library, and it's built the Te wetlands with enormous stormwater basins that have stopped homes from flooding, those kind of things. It means that we've got a much more people-centred city, and people can start seeing that, and they really like the way the city is humming. We get lots of great feedback from people who visit, which is great, and everyone's saying what an amazing place Christchurch is to be. It does mean that the current council gets the benefit of all of those previous decisions, of course, even though there are members of the council who railed against them at the time. And so that's a tough thing to overcome.
Now, Christchurch City Council is not one of the councils that's going to be holding a referendum around Māori wards this year. There's a very different relationship with Ngāi Tahu in the South Island to some of the other places that are running these. I'm very curious to know what your perspective is on the referendum. Because I find talking to people all over the country, there are some voters who are using that as a marker. I'm going to vote for people who support this or don't support the wards. Obviously, not an issue there. But not having that as something to deal with, I'm really curious to know, have you had any of that kind of filtered through during the campaign, like people asking about that because it's not front and center there, and what your perspective is as somebody who's been working in local government for a while now through all sorts of different facets, what you think the role of Māori wards and Māori representation can be and can look like?
Yeah, I've actually had the question a couple of times. I think that because there's been, especially in the various marae and stuff around, there's been a lot of talk about the Māori wards, and there's a lot of social media from that community around it nationwide. And some of them have been surprised that they weren't getting a vote, for example, here in Aotearoa Christchurch, and they hadn't realised about the relationship that we have with the local runanga and their desire to keep the relationship as it is at the moment. I think it should be every council's right to make that decision without a referendum. I mean, we have other places where councils decide on their ward system. So we have
Mhm.
the large rural ward of Banks Peninsula, for example, which has one councillor for around 8,000 people, where the other wards have one for 25. And we don't have to hold a referendum on that. It's just a council decision that gets recommended to the Local Government Commission. And I don't see why Māori wards should be any different.
Um, with this year's election coming up in, I'm just trying to think, numbers wise, 47 days from the day of recording. So it'll probably be about 42, 43 days by the time I get the video edited and put out. What do you think is the most important thing that voters should take on board before they cast their ballot this year?
I think that doing a bit of a deeper dive than just the 150 words, I think is really important. So everyone's allowed 150 words only in their candidate booklet, which means that it's really high level and people can say one thing but mean something slightly different. So tracking on things like the policy.nz website, having a look at people's actual policies so that you know what they are when you're voting, but also so that you can hold them to account. If someone gets voted in just based on that 150 words, that's kind of meaningless and high level, and they get in, they can pretty much do whatever they want um, without being held to account for 3 years. And they'll say, oh, but I had a mandate, when they weren't clear about their policies. So checking out other websites, checking out voting records, all of that sort of stuff's really important.
How would you recommend going to meetings? Meet the
Oh,
candidate
yes.
events?
Meet the candidate events are great. So go to them, ask questions, see the candidates in person. We've had a couple that have been live streamed. So the press debate the other day was live streamed on the 4th of September. And other people have recorded them and put them up on their YouTube pages, those kind of things. And if there's not a candidate debate in your area, you can start one. So they're organised by community groups, not organised by candidates.
That's perfect. And I guess last question is, how can people find more information about your campaign?
Really easily, just going to my website, sarah.templeton.nz, but also checking on things like the policy.nz website and other ones. There's lots of organisations who ask candidates questions about their special their area, so Gen Zero or Spokes or a range of different ones, and they've got information about candidates too.
Brilliant. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me. Good luck with the competition, with the race, with the election, with everything else that's going on at the moment. It's a
Yeah, thanks
busy
so
time
much.
for you. I don't envy you.
It's great, but it's also really humbling. I've had a huge amount of support. So I've had over 200 people sign up online on the website. I've had hundreds of
Brilliant.
donations, and most of them are like $100 or less. People just giving what they can afford. 140 odd people have volunteered their fences for my face, which is kind of weird, biking around the city. Um, and I've got about 70 people at the moment going out, hand delivering leaflets and that kind of thing across the city too. So really humbling. It's been great.
I don't think a lot of voters realise that for a successful campaign in a big place like Christchurch, it does take a team. It's almost impossible to get the word out without the effort of a whole bunch of people who support you and what you're doing. So I think
Yeah,
it's an
yeah.
awesome
No,
shout
it's
out.
just amazing. And I think it's a while since Christchurch has seen a real sort of grassroots community campaign. But I don't have a stack of wealthy backers, and volunteers and grassroots is what I know. It's where I've come from, and it's been amazing to go through it.
It's a pity you can't just give Simeon a call and say, hey, that $1 billion that you didn't give us before for the roading, can I have it now for the campaign?
I know, right? That'd be great.
Yeah. Simeon doesn't take calls from people these days.
I'm not
I
an
don't
old
even know
boy,
him to do it.
so
Yeah.
I just wouldn't qualify there.
Yeah. Fair enough. Sarah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul.
Hey, don't forget to give the video a like if you haven't done so already, and make sure you hit that subscribe button for the most in-depth coverage of local government elections anywhere in the motu.